out. Final Fantasy fanboys and girls rejoice because we finally figure it out right now on Filter. Welcome to Filter, a hand-picked top 10 video game countdown is voted on by you, the viewer, at g4tv.com. I'm ditching my normal Diane Mizota host personality so you guys can see me as I truly am. High summoner and J-pop singing sensation, Yona. Pretty cute, huh? Once long ago in a different age, a noble video game company known as Square Enix, struggling against the forces of digital mediocrity, placed all their hopes and dreams into an ancient 8-bit cartridge. Crafting what they foresaw would be their swan song, the wizards at Square dubbed that game Final Fantasy. Nearly 12 titles later, the magic has endured again and again, invoking one of the most revered and successful role-playing franchises since the beginning of time. But what is really behind the rise of Final Fantasy? We gazed long and hard into our crystal ball to find out.
Famicom has come out in Japan, and some of the first games for Famicom were from Square, but Sakaguchi was bored to death with the whole thing, and he wanted out.
He'd been impressed with Dragon Warrior, and he was trying to make a role-playing game similar to that for Square Enix.
Rumor has it that they called it Final Fantasy because if this game didn't work, that was going to be their final game.
It was a mega hit. It was a mega hit, and it did well in the United States, too.
Released in Japan in 1987, in 1990, Final Fantasy for the NES.
Quite frankly, it set the bar. It put more features, it put more graphics, and the music is just second to none.
You cared about each character. You really did get a sense of adventuring through this grand world.
It's a nice combination of good stories, good game mechanics, amazing graphics. If you look at the Final Fantasy games, Sakaguchi is always dancing at the edge of what a system can possibly do, and visuals have become a very driving force in video games. And I think to a large extent, you really have to credit Sakaguchi with that.
It's a quality series, you know, it's sleek, they spend a lot of money on it, and it's super polished.
Final Fantasy VII is the best example. They saw these amazing graphics and these great cinematics, and people who didn't even like RPGs and didn't want to read text when they were playing games went out and bought it. That expanded the genre. A lot of people got it and found out that, hey, I really like an RPG game.
If I didn't know better, I'd think Square had cast some diabolical love spell on the fans and critics. Now, let's begin our best of Final Fantasy adventure with my favorite part, the hero. Do you think Shadow cast a cloud over Vincent? Or is Auron more of a badass than Vivi? Prepare for battle, only one shall remain standing.
I think Squall really comes across as a kind of a dark hero, kind of an anti-hero in a sense. He wasn't really set on saving the world or really helping anyone. He just found himself kind of in a position to start to find out more about himself and start to care.
Vivi was in Final Fantasy IX, and he was actually a cute character that a lot of people got into because, you never see his face. You just see little two eyes sticking out of a big black hole.
He looks like the guy from He-Man. Orko. Vivi reminds me of Orko from the He-Man cartoon series.
He was a very cute character, and he was a good mascot for Final Fantasy IX.
Vincent was just kind of badass because he has like a gun and like he turns into monsters and stuff. That was kind of amusing. He was definitely one of my favorites just because he was kind of cool and he had an interesting background story to it.
Auron was a really cool character because you can see that he never raises his voice. He always has his eyes behind these weird glasses. He always does this weird thing with his coat where one sleeve is sort of dangling there and he just sort of uses his arm to hide it in his coat, sort of like Napoleon back in his day. So he's a really cool guy.
Cloud, he was probably the first Final Fantasy character, I think, that had his own dialogue. He wasn't one of those like silent heroes. He had sort of a more masculine soldier persona.
Cloud is probably everyone's favorite Final Fantasy character. I mean, he defined the spiky, blonde-haired character with the giant sword, and you know, I think a lot of people are waiting for him to come back in Final Fantasy.
I had a feeling you guys were going to put Cloud on top. I mean, the guy was pretty cute with that spiky hair and huge sword. And of course, every hero needs a hottie. But which heroine will become queen? Can Yuna summon a victory? Or will Lulu's endowments win big? Be vigilant and all will be revealed.
Lulu is pretty hot. Her personality is kind of interesting because, like, female version of Auron kind of thing, you know? I think she's one of the best characters in Final Fantasy series.
I like Lulu from 10, but she got married and pregnant in 10 too, which, you know, that you know, kind of docks points right there.
Yuna from 10 is one of the most popular modern Final Fantasy characters, to the point where she ended up being spun off into her own RPG. You know, she's a very serious girl. She never really opens up her emotions. But as the game begins, you can see her gradually opening up and becoming, you know, you can sort of see the womanliness in her inside grow out as her love for the main character grows.
Riku's there, I think, mainly for, like, I don't know, for people who are into, I don't know, video game females, I guess, because she's basically pretty scantily dressed, like, in both 10 and 10-2. So I guess that's why people like her. And she's kind of like airheady.
Tifa from 7 is sort of a landmark for the series in more ways than one, because she was the first female lead character in the series, but at the same time she was also one of the more complicated characters in the Final Fantasy history, because she starts out with the basic motive of revenge, but then eventually settles down and forms a family of her own and lets other characters take over for her.
I think the reason why Aerith's so popular is because she dies in Final Fantasy VII. And like a lot of people, they get distraught at that moment in the game.
You get kind of like just devastated, you know, like, oh man, I can't believe that, you know, they did that.
Obviously, you're in a fantasy world. You're like, oh, she's gonna come back to life, right? It's gotta happen. But it just never happens.
I've never seen more people care about a female character who died in a video game than Aerith.
I wonder if I have what it takes to be a Final Fantasy heroine. I mean, I could see myself vanquishing the forces of evil, saving the world, and still getting home in time to change the cat litter. Or maybe I'll recover from my delusions of grandeur by the time we get back from the break. Because when we return, we'll see who you guys summoned forth to help you fight the good fight against some of the meanest boss baddies to ever creep their way into a Final Fantasy game. You're not going to want to miss this. Welcome back to Filter. I'm Yuna, hacking and slashing my way through the best of Final Fantasy. The rankings for Filter shows come directly from the responses you post on the G4 website. To make your vote count, log on to g4tv.com/filter and select the Filterator. Then choose a category, vote on a scale of 1 to 10, and we'll take care of the rest. While you're there, be sure to post your suggestions for topics and games you'd like to see appear in future episodes. Did your Moogle flip-flop the first time you saw Leviathan summoned? If it didn't, you might want to check your pulse, because the summon attacks are some of the most transcendent eye candy experiences in the Final Fantasy universe. But which one will conquer all? Let's find out.
Ifrit's probably one of the coolest summons, both in 7 and in 10, because the way he just sort of pops out from under the ground and completely looks like the biggest badass you've ever seen, even though chances are you get him relatively early in the game.
Anima had this really amazing overdrive attack. It just obliterated everything. Like, it was very strange because of the anime design. He's basically chained up and he looks like he's being tortured. So when he's unleashing all this pain on everyone else, you know it's going to be catastrophic.
Shiva's gorgeous. She's the Ice Queen. What more can you say about that? You know, Shiva has improved over, you know, countless Final Fantasy games, and all of her summons are very dramatic and very dynamic. They're so soft, yet she has so much power behind them.
Oh, hell yeah, Bahamut is the shit. He has to be my second favorite summon of all time. He's a big dragon, he breathes like baleflame and just does a lot of damage. What more can you ask for in a summon?
He's made appearances in a lot of different Square RPGs, in addition to Final Fantasy. So for Square fans, he's a pretty well-known summon.
Knights of the Round is probably one of the most damaging summons that you could use in Final Fantasy VII. It's just basically you got all these knights and they would attack your enemy like one after the other. So it was pretty devastating, but it also took a really long time.
The animation for it is like 5 minutes long.
Longest summon I have ever seen. That summon was like a lunch break. You cast it, walk away, make a sandwich, come back.
I'm sensing a pattern here, and I think it keeps involving the number 7. You guys know best, though, and we wouldn't want it any other way. As pop superstar Yuna, I understand what it takes to make great music. But Nobuo Uematsu's forte is Final Fantasy. Listen up.
My inspiration for the music in the Final Fantasy series was to draw from my long love of classical music. When I'm scoring a game, I typically like to be involved from the very beginning of the development process. I go into the project with my own theme in mind, and ideally I try to create something new and innovative that goes with the overall feel of the game. I want people to look back in 20 to 25 years and feel the same adoration for Final Fantasy as they did when they first played it. The fact that I've introduced a new generation to the music I love, it brings me great joy.
Talking about music is so stimulating. Maybe we can do it again sometime. We know that Final Fantasy is filled with valiant heroes and fearless femmes, but where would these champions be without some creepy villain plotting world domination, dreaming of power supreme, and kidnapping cute girls from their boyfriends every chance they get? So be brave, my devout warriors, and check out who skulked their way into the top spot.
Sin was like just this big, ugly, hunking mass of evil that Titus tried to defeat. But it's kind of unclear how that whole Sin thing works, because I think Sin was Titus's dad or something like that. So there's a very like Darth Vader, Luke Skywalker thing, like, oh, I'm your dad type scenario.
Everyone Resist is among my favorite villains ever. Mostly because of his laugh, which is sort of like like that, which was really amazing for Super Nintendo technology. My favorite quote from him is, "This is terrible. You sound like chapters in a self-help book."
Seymour is religious and political power gone awry. There was no standing up to this guy because he held a really respectable post in Spira, one of the highest you can attain. And if anybody even questions him, he's got the power to disappear you like that.
Kuja surprised me. I really liked the transform of Kujamura because it was something fantastical about it. He didn't look threatening, but he was just brimming with power, and he was very elegant. He was threatening. He was a power.
Sephiroth is like everyone's favorite bad guy. In fact, a lot of Final Fantasy fans, they even like Sephiroth more than Cloud.
Sephiroth didn't really get players to hate him until he killed Aeris. The moment he killed Aeris is the moment that put him over the top. From then on, it made taking him down personal.
Sephiroth is so mean. He killed Cloud's girlfriend just as they were about to make out. Come on, at least let a guy get a little before you off his girl. We're pushing it to the limit after the break. We'll invoke some more great Final Fantasy moments, and then you're going to tell me what your juiciest fantasy of all time is. Will Cloud and company have the final word, or does Sin have something to say before it's all over? Remain stout of heart, my Final Fantasy fanboys. You will receive your rewards when Filter returns. Welcome back to Filter. I'm Yuna, the host formerly known as Diane Mizota, and we're leveling up through the best of Final Fantasy. As our quest for the best ventures forward, the ultimate crusade of all time nears its finale. With so many remarkable games in the series to choose from, which one will reign triumphant and take the crown as the most popular Final Fantasy? Patience, fantasy fans. First, let's praise the victors so far. You gave Cloud the silver lining by voting him best male lead character. Aerith has been resurrected into the top spot as your favorite female lead. He's evil, evil! You summoned Sephiroth as the most devious boss baddie ever. And speaking of summons, you guys picked the Knights of the Round as the most spectacular summon attack of all time. Before we prepare for the final battle, we wanted to find out what the future holds for Final Fantasy. The series has been a huge hit with gamers, almost as long as it takes to breed a gold chocobo. But does this franchise have enough cure-all to keep it alive and kicking for years to come? We asked, and you told.
I think the future of the Final Fantasy games is somewhat like the present of the Final Fantasy games. They're going to continue to find ways to drive technology in video games. They will continue to be the best looking games.
It's going to look more like reality, more like you're watching a movie as you play it.
I think the series is just going to get more immersive, probably bigger.
Pushing the boundaries of what they've already set standards for, creating a more compelling story.
They found they can expand the storylines now with Final Fantasy X2. People like Final Fantasy X enough that they wanted to see more of it.
Improving gameplay, definitely. I'm sure they'll go somewhere around that.
Refining the battle system so maybe it offers something for the casual gamer to play, but also the guy who's the hardcore Final Fantasy nut.
I personally would like to see things like male leads who really do convey a sense of purpose.
I think we're going to see an online version of Final Fantasy along with a single player Final Fantasy, and that series is just going to keep going and going and going.
The Final Fantasy experts have spoken, and from what we just saw, there are plenty of hardcore devotees to keep the gale rolling in. We charged you with the task of seeking out the fabled Final Fantasy. Out of so many games, each a treasure in and of itself, which one will prove its worth and wear the crown? The challengers have stepped forward and their blades have been sharpened. The tourney begins for the Sweetest Five, presented by Juicy Fruit.
Final Fantasy I really introduced a lot of people to role-play games in the first place. It introduced the idea of, walking around this big countryside and the whole storyline and the more turn-based battle sequences as opposed to, like, Legend of Zelda where you were fighting in real time.
For the time, it was really impressive because it had a really good story compared to other RPGs at the time, and you're also able to customize your party to extents which were never seen before.
Final Fantasy VI was, when that game first came out, I got it, and I don't remember sleeping that night. That game was ridiculous, just in terms of everything, the story, the level of involvement, the characters were awesome. Just everything was stepped up, Just the intricacy of the game was just ridiculous.
In a lot of ways, Final Fantasy VIII was the non-RPG player's RPG, which really horked a lot of people.
It was a little bit more story-driven than the other Final Fantasies. It was a very thematic type Final Fantasy game.
It was a pretty good game. It had a wonderful romantic story going for it as well. But it was the game that I think most Final Fantasy hardcore people would say was the low point.
Now we have a battle on our hands. According to you guys, the best Final Fantasy games of all time are Final Fantasy VII and Final Fantasy X. But which one has the magic to claim the #1 spot? Does 10 have enough Phoenix down to keep it conscious? Or will 7 make a clean sweep and capture the #1 spot? Get ready, because this ain't Blitzball. It's the Final Fantasy Filter Face-Off.
Final Fantasy VII was what laid the groundwork for the rest of the Final Fantasies after that.
The story was really well done, and the characters all had these reasons for interacting with each other.
I think Final Fantasy VII would take the top spot mainly because Final Fantasy X was really cool, of course, but at the same time it was still basically an evolution from previous games of the series. 7, on the other hand, was a revolution because it introduced a wealth of brand new features to the game. 10 was the first game on the PS2. It sort of set the standard for what Final Fantasy is going to be for pretty much the near future. Most of the scenes were now done in real time, and everything looked a lot better, and also really concreted Square's role in the industry as graphics pioneers.
I think that's how it's going to go in the future. Just, it's just like a whole new kind of involvement and a whole new type of entertainment.
Historically, you'd probably want to give it to 7, but just based on graphics alone, you'd have to go with 10.
So, which game did you choose? The polls are closed, your votes were counted, and your choice for the best Final Fantasy game of all time is Final Fantasy VII. All hail 7. But could someone please explain that ending to me? Well, that wraps up this episode of Filter. Remember, the opinions expressed on this show are yours, not mine. So make your vote count on future episodes by logging onto the Filter show page at g4tv.com/filter. Until then, I'm Yuna. Host Diane Mizota will be back for the next show, but I'm keeping the outfit. See you next time.